the European elites in league with our elite, who effectively, if you remember, in 1975, we joined what was called the European Economic Community. It wasn't effectively anything other than an economic union, but that very quickly changed, and effectively they tried to politically integrate Europe. That failed, and then in 1997 they tried to force it through with the introduction of the euro. So having failed politically, they tried to do it financially. That was my first foray into standing as a member of parliament to fight to save the British pound, because once you lose your currency, effectively you lose your sovereignty and your national identity. And our gold reserves were going to be shipped out to Germany, to Frankfurt. And we would have become a vassal state, part of the European Union. It would have been irreversible. But in the event, thanks to Sir James Goldsmith, we secured enough votes. We forced the establishment to promise a referendum before they surrendered to the euro. And we ended up saving the pound, which in the end resulted in the referendum in 2016, where the British people voted to take back their sovereignty, which ultimately, I think the establishment always knew that the core, the body of Britain, or body of England in particular, wanted its own accountable parliament in Westminster. It didn't want to be part of an unaccountable European socialist protectionist superstate.
So the quote-unquote elites in Britain and the elites in the United States, it's coordinated with both of them. So
I think less so in America, Joe. I can't speak for America, although when you look at what the Democrats did with US aid and all the stuff that was going on under Joe Biden, you have to wonder whether they began with the World Economic Forum to play a part in this. But I think the post-war plan for Europe was founded on a socialist principle, whereas I think America has always been a very sound, politically based structure based on, obviously, the founding fathers and your constitution, which I always think returns power to the individual and has always understood that the dangers are statist dangers, not individual dangers. So I'm very much in the camp, I like the individual and a minimal state. And I think that's much more in your DNA than it is in the European DNA, which tends to be more statist.
Right. So they did this on purpose, and they brought in people from what country specifically?
Well, initially you got in Britain, you got people from Africa. You got the Windrush generation, so you got a lot of Africans came, ostensibly to fill jobs that they always say the British people don't want to do, and it gathered momentum. It was relatively slow to start with, so you had an influx of people coming to the UK. You had open borders in Europe. So one of the absolute embedded rules they have is this freedom of movement concept. So they don't have effectively national borders. But we still obviously had the channel, but we embraced this and we started this immigration. What happened is it gradually happened, and I think these rape gangs have been going on, or we know they have, for 30, 40, probably 50 years, to a lesser extent. But when Tony Blair got in and he undermined a lot of constitutional sort of historical law, you got an acceleration of immigration from other parts of the world, not just from Europe, but also from other countries, South Asian countries in particular, who came to the UK. And the genesis of the rape gangs really is, I think, the cultural oil and water mix of these people coming from what I call clannish societies in South Asia and coming to very high trust societies such as the one we had and the one you have here, which have taken thousands of years to develop. So they're high trust societies where, Lee Kuan Yew based Singapore on post-war Britain, where you had honesty boxes for newspapers in London, and you had a country that was completely at peace with itself. So it won the war, it respected peace, it respected freedom, and people were rebuilding their lives, having fought a Second World War to free Europe from sort of, in this case, Germany. Previously, we'd done it at Waterloo when we relieved Europe of the French with Napoleon. So it really accelerated after 1997 when a lot of the legislation that Tony Blair and his cohorts passed, such as the Human Rights Act, which embeds within it the ECHR. He created the Supreme Court. They passed laws like the Equalities Act, and there are a raft of other legal acts they passed, which effectively empowered a multicultural society, which in some ways, I think, damaged the interests of the British people. So,
and you think this is on purpose. And this is my point, is what is the benefit for them to be joined up with the rest of Europe? Is it just purely financial? Is it a power-based strategy where if you can diminish the quality of life for people and institute more laws and put more restrictions on them, you can control them easier, and it's less pushback for the politicians, less pushback for the people that are in charge?
Basically, yes. I think it's the age-old battle between individualism and collectivism. So I think the EU is a collectivist construct, whereas I think Britain, as it was under our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, which, as you probably know, our Bill of Rights in 1689, a lot of that was lifted by your founding fathers who embedded it within the US Constitution. So, and that embeds freedom of speech, it embeds the individual, it embeds all of the rights that I think make the Anglo-Saxon world great.
So how did it deteriorate to the point where they're arresting 12,000 people a year for social media posts?
Joe, it's shocking. And this is why I have got involved in politics. I've been involved in politics since I fought the Maastricht Treaty and then stood, as I said, in 97. I did a lot for Business for Sterling, a lot for Vote Leave. Then I stood for the Brexit Party and I was elected there. So I've been fighting this march towards an unaccountable state which effectively rewards collectivism and punishes individualism, to the extent that now I find myself at the age of 68 as an MP running a party called Restore Britain to try and reverse this tide, to re-empower the individual, to return to our original constitution, and to protect the interests, above all else, of the British people, to whom I think government should be accountable.
Do they still have that kind of unchecked immigration? Is it currently ongoing?
We still have illegal migrants arriving by boat. They can't be under the current laws and treaties that we're part of. They're not being deported. The judges, thanks to the creation of the Supreme Court, they are now a quango, a woke quango. I think a lot of our judiciary is corrupt. So the answer to your question is we still have illegal migration, and we have people living in Britain illegally. We have a lot of foreign prisoners in our prisons, and we have people who've come in under various waves of immigration. One of which, the biggest of which, was probably under Boris Johnson, who was actually a Conservative Prime Minister, who allowed thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to come into Britain. And basically, they are now a burden to the British taxpayer. So the answer to your question is they're arriving illegally still. They're living here illegally, or living in Britain illegally still. We've got foreign criminals in our prisons, and we've still got the legacy of this huge amount of immigration which took place.
And are a large percentage of these people receiving welfare from the British government?
Yes.
What percentage?
Well, most of the people who arrive, they're all supported, Joe. I mean, they're put in hotels.
Immediately, as soon as you get there?
In Parliament, I see the contracts. Thanks to my parliamentary questions, I'm allowed to ask questions and scrutinise the contracts for instance, the Bibby Stockholm was a boat which cost the British taxpayer £1.5 billion. It's actually now lying redundant and not being used. But I've seen the contracts for these illegal migrants in terms of the laundry services they get, in terms of the taxi services they get, in terms of the food they require. I mean, literally, it is like it's like staying in a very comfortable hotel. And we've now got these people being settled all across our country.
How many?
In hotels. Well, I don't think the government knows, Joe, to answer your question. I don't think they know how many people are living in Britain illegally.
Was it the similar situation that America had over the last 4 years, where on the low number, they think it was 10 million people came in, which is insane. It's an insane amount of people to come in 4 years.
We think there's enough work to do initially to detain and deport people who are arriving illegally. I mean, to my mind, illegal means illegal,
Right.
so it's fairly straightforward. To the people who are arriving illegally, people living here illegally, the foreign criminals, there's plenty of work to do to remove them from Britain. And then I think we need to turn our attention, and that's in our mass deportation document. I've given you a copy of that, which effectively sets out the constitutional reasons why we have a problem, how we correct those constitutional issues, and how we then practically detain and deport the people who aren't supposed to be here. And once we've done that, we'll then turn our attention to people who are living in Britain, to your point, who are on welfare, who are going to cost the taxpayer a fortune for the rest of their lives probably, who aren't working, who are culturally different to us, who have a different view of their religion to the Christian religion, and are increasingly living in small groups of people who haven't integrated, who are living under Sharia law and who have their own courts. And who
They have their own court.
They have their own courts, Sharia courts, yes. A parallel legal system.